Hola, soy Ekatia Rosenbaum, profesional de la psicología y el desarrollo personal, máster en neurociencias de la educación y especialista en gestión emocional y mindfulness. Bienvenidas a mi podcast. En cada episodio voy a compartirte reflexiones propias y charlas con otras compañeras que me inspiran para que pensemos juntas sobre distintos temas que van a emocionarte e impulsarte a vivir por fin tu vida como vos querés. Vamos a hablar sobre las distintas esferas del bienestar en las que podés actuar para vivir bien de verdad. Relaciones personales, autoconocimiento y desarrollo personal, equilibrio mental y emocional, sostenibilidad y emprendimiento. Comenzamos.
I met Holly a few months after I moved to Barcelona in 2018. Up until that moment, I was basically not doing any exercise for real since high school, at least not in a sustainable way. I had started a year before that practicing yoga, and I was actually quite into it, but everything regarding strength, cardio, and actually sweating was a no deal for me. A couple of years earlier, I had changed my diet to a vegetarian one when I began my spiritual journey at the 𝗵𝗵 Foundation, which I talked about for a little bit in the previous episode with 𝗵𝗵Fernandez. And although I didn't at first connect it with Holly, knowing that on top of being a personal trainer, she was also a nutritionist and specifically vegan, that integrative aspect of what she had to offer as a coach immediately hooked me up to her classes. Well, actually, what first hooked me up to her classes was her amazing energy and her beautiful studio, full of cheered up internationals. But soon when I heard about her personal story and how she had integrated it all in her work, she basically became one of my first mentors. I was so lucky to find her. My relationship with food and exercise had always been a reason of internal conflict, as probably for most women and lots of men. And you'll see how her story is so inspiring, and taking a step aside from the screaming world of the fitness industry, she manages to help us build up a more respectful and confident relationship with ourselves, having fun along the way. I invited Holly to my podcast today to talk about physical health, diet, and its impact on our mental health as well, because it is all related and completely intertwined. Hi, Holly, welcome. So happy to have you here today. I was just giving a little introduction about how we met in Barcelona and how I felt so motivated in your classes. I think especially because of your high energy and your cozy studio full of internationals. But also later on, when I got to know you a bit better, I was really, really inspired by the way you taught us to relate with our bodies from an holistic, more respectful, integrative approach. If it's okay with you, maybe we could start at the beginning. Would you tell us a little bit about your story? How was it that you actually started getting into the fitness world and became a nutritionist? Was it something you did simultaneously, or how did it happen?
Yes, thank you so much for having me, first of all. It's so nice to be on a podcast and feeling like I'm talking about things that I'm passionate about. I think we have such a lot of common interests. Yeah, so wow, at the beginning, originally I'm from Manchester in England, and I just led a really normal life. I went to university, I did journalism, and I was then working as a journalist after uni, pretty standard. And then, I mean, I like to party like everyone, but nothing too crazy. And I was 22, it was 2012. And suddenly I woke up in the night, it was very dramatic. And I was like, I don't feel well, I have chest pains. And I kept thinking, oh, maybe it's a little bit of anxiety that I'd had on and off in my teenage years. And I was like, this feels really weird. And then I started coughing up blood, and it just got a lot worse. And my health, I knew that it was physical. So I go to the hospital, and they do all these scans, and it's all very dramatic, as you can imagine. And they find 13 blood clots on both of my lungs, spread out on my lungs. And for someone that the worst thing I'd ever had in my life was a cold, and it kind of made me realize that I'm not indestructible. And I think we all have that in the back of our minds. You're like, I'm fine, I'm healthy, this stuff doesn't happen to me. I wish I could say that that was like a wake-up call and I suddenly started like understanding life, but instead it was completely the opposite of that. What I actually did was I completely went into kind of victim mentality for a full year, and it was the world was against me. Why has this happened to me? Everything that I did in the year after that was self-destruct. So it was like forgetting my medication. I lost a lot of friends because I kind of alienated myself, and I was just very angry at the world, actually. And I think that what that did for me physically as well was that I turned to food for comfort. And that was the one thing that would just never let me down. It was always there. And I would binge and I would purge. And I was just in that mindset that food was the comfort. Food was the thing that I would go to when I felt sad or angry or alone or even in pain. I would be like, okay, let's cook and let's make something that's going to fill me up, because I felt so empty and out of control in my life. So I was using this thing as something to make me feel full. That also came obviously with doing absolutely zero exercise. I'd done boxing most of my life before then, and this point I was like, I don't want to do exercise. What's the point? Look at what happened to me, and I was healthy. There's no point in doing all of this. Exercise is stupid. People are stupid. La la la. And then a year, pretty much to the day, weirdly, after that, I got similar pains, and I was like, how is this happening again? And of course, it maybe was the lifestyle that I decided to lead for that year. It could have been also mindset and just the way that I wasn't looking after myself. But it turns out that I had like I have a blood disorder that's kind of undiagnosed. They don't have a name for it, but it means that my blood is thick. So it causes clots very easily. So I have to be on blood thinners forever now. And what happened that year later in 2013 was another clot formed, but this time it was like the size of my hand, and it went through my heart. So it caused scarring and damage and a whole dramatic chain of events that happened, and hospital stays, and they didn't really understand how it had got this bad. And I'd only been off blood thinners a few weeks. Anyway, that happened, and that finally was the kind of, I really need to look after myself. I really need to stop blaming everyone and just get to the facts of this is my life and I can be in control in a healthier way. So that's what I decided then to go to a personal trainer. And I remember my first experience with a personal trainer, and I went to them and I sat there and I was so vulnerable in that moment, like, and it makes me upset even thinking about it now, thinking of me in that moment. And I sat there and I told them what had happened to me. And it wasn't that I expected sympathy, but I expected a level of understanding or empathy almost. And instead, what I was met with was, well, you just need to work out and, eat chicken and steak and broccoli for breakfast and up your protein. And I was met with like this harsh feeling. And of course, not all trainers are like that. Don't get me wrong. I just got a bad one, I guess, or one that wasn't suited for me. And then so I stayed with him for a couple of weeks, and it just wasn't working. It was punishment. I became like I was punishing my body. And of course, I lost a couple of kilos and I felt better, but not really. I just felt like I was punishing myself. I was achy all the time. I felt like crap. I was eating things that didn't agree with me. My digestion, my gut, my skin, it just wasn't working out for me. Went to another personal trainer, very similar situation. And then I started to become less vulnerable almost. I started to put my own guard, like, yeah, this shit happened to me, but like, I'm fine now. I want you to push me, and I'm ready, but I'm not. And this pattern carried on, and I went to a few trainers and I went to a few classes, and I got the same from all of those things. I got the same feedback of exercise is punishment. You need to starve yourself to look a certain way. And people like me didn't belong in a gym environment, and people like me shouldn't do the things that everyone else is doing. And it just made me think. I sat there one day and I just thought, that where do I fit in this space, and where do people like me fit? Because I know people like me, and I know so many women, and I'm sure men feel like this as well, that don't find where they belong in this environment. And cut a long story short, what I did first was started to get into nutrition. And it was something that just interested me because every single personal trainer that I spoke to told me a different thing about my nutrition and about how I should eat. And they all had a big opinion, very opinionated and very strongly one way. So it would be like, cut carbs, eat protein. Or it would be eat carbs, track your calories. Or it would be forget calories, track your macros, or whatever the craze was at the time. They were always so rigid. And I thought, surely there's a fact somewhere though. Surely there is a fact. Like I'm very black and white, and it's a problem sometimes, but I'm very logical thinking. So if there's a fact, I want to know it. So then I'm like, but how can you tell me that eating this is bad, but you're telling me it's good? And then I realized that personal trainers are not nutritionists, and they get like 2 hours of nutrition training during their personal training course. And then I went back to university, studied in my own time whilst I was working, and did nutrition therapy. And then when I started to understand nutrition, I was like, oh my God, we're all told so many lies and so much about nutrition, and your health can be healed with the food that we eat. And we just don't know the importance of it, and neither do our parents. It's nobody's fault, but we're in this loop of just abusing ourselves through food. So instantly I started to kind of change my diet, let's say. I was eating so much more fruit and vegetables, all of the stuff that was making me feel good. I understood my body a little bit more. I understood what made me thrive. Fitness-wise, I then started to get back into boxing and back into doing stuff that I liked, and understanding that movement is good no matter what it is. Like, everybody's going to have an opinion on different ways to move your body. But for me, it was like, okay, so I'm working with a therapist as well, and they would tell me, do things that make you feel good, even for the next just 2 weeks. With your movement, just do what feels good. Don't do something that your mate's doing, or what you've seen on Instagram, or what your PT tells you to do. Just do what makes you feel good. And that was key for me to understand, what do you mean I can move my body in a way that I want, like without anyone screaming at me? Oh my God, this is a revelation. And it just got me into that little bit of a groove of, oh, this is where I belong. Now I feel like I belong. Now I feel like I can do things that feel good for me, and I don't have to fit a mold or have a goal or have a whatever. It's just to feel good. It's for longevity. It's for my life. And then I enrolled on a personal training course, and even then it was like very strange situation to be in, because I felt so like, I've only started training a year ago, and I've had this health problem and blah, blah, blah. And then I did another personal training course. And then all of a sudden I was a personal trainer and a nutritionist working as a journalist. But what happened then was my work kind of took a nosedive. I was more interested in, learning more about my body and about how I could maybe help others, and what this whole world that I've been like exposed to. I wanted to break it. I wanted to break through it. I wanted to get rid of all these things that we have in our head, that you should look a certain way, and everybody's so obsessed with getting smaller. And I was like, but what about if we just like ourselves? And I just started to explore all of this stuff whilst working.
So in the beginning, you started getting into personal training more for yourself than to actually get into business with it, like to understand yourself, understand your body, and your general situation, this health issue that you had. And I think it's interesting because it is something that in a way attracted me to you. When I first met you, there's like a gap there, right? Between, as you were mentioning, these all fitness coaches that don't know anything about nutrition, or they have like a 2 hour, as you were mentioning, training, like a masterclass on it, and then nothing else. May I ask something to get further on the question of this turbulent relationship that you were mentioning with food? And because you are vegan, that we haven't said it, like we still haven't said it, but I know that you're vegan. And I think talking a little bit about how you started eating more veggies and fruits and food that, there's like a mindful factor in everything that you were just saying, because you were saying, like, I can move my body in a way that I feel good about it. Is this something, that you started like connecting to your body and the way you were eating in a more mindful way? And how was it that you finally ended up deciding to be vegan, to eat plant-based food?
I think for me, the vegan journey is really a funny one because most people do it like gradually. And most people, like I mentioned before, I'm very black and white. So it's either all or nothing with me. I've learned to live in the gray a little bit more, but with the vegan thing, I moved to Barcelona, which is where I kind of started my business in 2016. And I think when I moved here, started my business, started to learn from other people and understand that you can also change drastically your life. I actually met my partner around that time, who I'm still with now, and he was vegan. People often think it was me that turned him vegan, but it was actually the complete other way around. I was eating meat, I was eating fish, I was eating dairy. I gave up quite a long time ago, but meat and fish I was eating quite regularly. And he just said to me, we were just friends at the time, and he just said to me, how is someone that is so in tune with themselves and the world and your environment, and how much he saw me loving on every animal that I saw, still consuming them? And it wasn't like in a judgy way, but it was just in a curiosity way. So I just said to myself that day, I'm going to go vegan tomorrow, and I'm going to do it for 1 month. And I'm going to not tell anyone because I don't want the pressure. I don't want the stigma. I wasn't ready for that. And I went vegan for a month and I felt amazing. I felt like spiritually, emotionally, physically, I was so much more aligned with who I was now, this transformation of myself. And I then did all the research like you do, I think, when you make a big change like this. And I started to understand that I don't know why it took me so long. I don't know why I got to 26 without understanding that this link between what I eat affects me so much mentally, like you said earlier, and emotionally. Like, I don't want to eat something that's died. That was it. I just couldn't get that out of my head. And that was the catalyst that kind of made me spin into, I'm never going to eat animals again. So for me, it was very overnight decision. I can't do this anymore. I can't believe that this hasn't been presented to me in this way. It's very like wholesome, and it makes me laugh because if you told me this 10 years ago, I would laugh at you that I was saying this out loud. But it's very holistic and wholesome to be moving your body and to be eating plants and to be, even better if you're outside in nature, of course, but wherever you are, and just feel like you're not playing a part in anything suffering.
Do you feel like everything that happened before kind of like led you up to that moment?
Yeah.
Led you up to that moment?
I think so, yeah. I think my life was just so different. I was kind of one of those people that would never, I would take the mick out of people like me. I would make jokes about people like me now, and I can laugh at myself now because it's funny that I'm like this. I used to be the one that was like, let's do drugs, let's drink, let's go out, let's go on a bender, let's go to Ibiza, to whatever. I was this such erratic like person that actually, when I look back now, I was just in self-destruct mode. I was in look at me mode. I was not in a good place mentally. So now when I see myself, I think, wow, that was really, really a 180. I'm like so different.
Yeah. Well, it seems like I do agree, and it seems to me like moving respectfully with your body and having a respectful way of relating with the world, with the other beings of the world, and with the earth. Spiritually speaking, I believe, and that's how I started being vegetarian as well, a way of I don't know, like feeling a bit more part of everything, and like feeling in harmony with the rest of the beings and the world and yourself mostly. So yeah, that's a shared experience for sure.
I have a question for you as well, if you don't mind. What did you have a point for yourself, or was it gradual? Like, did you remember the day when you said, I don't want to consume animals anymore?
I kind of did an experiment as well, as you mentioned, like being vegan for a month. I was vegetarian for 1 week because when I started my spiritual journey, I did this course at the Art of Living Foundation, and they ask you to be vegetarian if you can. Of course, it's not like mandatory or anything. And I was like feeling so much lighter and better, and this feeling of harmony with the rest of the world, kind of like I made that connection in my mind, and I was like, oh, this is good, this is nice. And then for the following week, I actually did like a second part of this course, which was a silence retreat. And my teacher, my mindfulness meditation teacher, said like, well, if you can maintain your vegetarian diet, you're gonna get a better experience, and you're gonna feel better during the silence retreat. And during the silence retreat also, they were asking for you to try, well, not to try, because this was actually a retreat, so they were giving you vegetarian food. So then I did like vegetarian food for 15 days. And then I was like, oh, okay, I feel good. This is a challenge. I can continue this diet for, let's try, how long can I keep it? And before that, I was actually like, my diet was very, very basic, like teenage, I don't know, the words like schnitzel in Milanesa, it's in Spanish, Argentinian food, and like chicken nuggets, like mashed potatoes and pasta, and like very basic food. So it was a big change. And I got more into the vegan thing when I met you, actually. So that's when I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then I remember when I moved to London, because we met in Barcelona, but when I moved to London, then you launched this project of being like vegan coach, or the website you had.
Yeah.
And that's when I started like trying to be vegan for longer periods of time. So going back to this vegan and fitness relation, there's like so much myths and prejudice toward exercising and being in a plant-based diet, like you're gonna, like, you won't have the strength, and then you won't be able to work out, or you won't be able to get, I don't know, muscle or anything. Would you tell us a bit more about how being in a plant-based diet relates to the fitness world from a nutritionist point of view, bring down these myths and prejudices that are there around?
With this, there's always people that have opinions and people that are doing things. It's actually, I want to touch on something that you said, actually, that's a really important point here. When you weren't vegan, the same as me, you were on a very basic diet of, I always call it like beige foods, right? Everything's beige. So it's delicious, of course. It's like your mashed potatoes, your carbs, all of this stuff. If you then started to work out, you would have no energy. You would have very little motivation. You probably wouldn't feel strong, but you're not vegan. So the thing with this is that I think what people mistake for being plant-based or being a meat eater is that you can be unhealthy with both. If I sat here and ate loads of bread every day, just for me, like, bread is not the devil, don't get me wrong, really, I love bread. But if I know that if I ate bread all the time, if I wasn't getting like a colorful amount of whole foods in my diet, that I would go to the gym and I would feel crap. But then what would be easy to say is, oh, it's because I'm plant-based, it's because I'm vegan. But actually, it's what you're having on your plate is very important. In a vegan diet, you can absolutely get enough protein. I mean, protein is very difficult to talk about because there's so many different, I'm actually doing a bit of a study on protein at the moment with some people, but there's such an obsession in the Western world with protein. And I think it came from the fitness industry, and it came from whey protein, and it came from us trying to monetize the fact that we need protein as much as we do. We eat so much more protein in the Western world than actually we need to. I mean, I'll probably get shot down for saying this by a lot of people, but let's take away the protein thing. If you're having a plate rich in fruits, in vegetables, in whole grains, in legumes, all of this good stuff, you are getting more than enough. You're getting more fiber, more antioxidants, more nutrient-rich, dense food that your body understands than you would if you had a plate of meat. The thing is that, of course, meat has protein. Of course, meat has also good things in it. But what I always say is it's not needed. It's very easy not to be vegan. It's very easy. The world is made for non-vegans. Of course, it's getting better. But what I will say is it's very easy not to be vegan. So a lot of the time when people come to me, they say, yeah, I tried vegan, but then I was like feeling like sluggish or tired or whatever. And then I say, okay, so talk me through a normal day. 99.9% of the time, they're just undernourished. It's nothing to do with being vegan. You could also be very, very undernourished and eat meat. So I always say I would say personally, I would look at somebody's diet and make sure that they're getting an abundance. I'm talking not just your 5 a day, I'm talking a smoothie with 6 different fruits in the morning, some kale, some spinach, some banana, apple, whatever. At lunchtime, having like again, colorful food. I always say eat the rainbow. At dinner time, you want a burger? Fabulous. There's millions of vegan burgers now. You could even make your own. They have high quality protein. There's a lot of really good brands. There's one here in Spain, 𝗂𝗄𝗃, that I really like because it's very clean. It's made with olive oil. It's not made with too much saturated fat. It's a really good nutritional product. Would I eat it 5 times a day? Absolutely not. But do I eat it 3-4 times a week? Yes, because for me, it's a good source of healthy protein, good fats, fiber, all of the other stuff. So then, yeah, I'm going to make some homemade chips and burger, and enjoy that and think food doesn't have to be this whole punishment or I mentioned before that I was using it back in the day as like it was a comfort for me. And food can be a comfort, don't get me wrong. Food is beautiful. It's amazing. There's nothing I love more than cooking for people and feeding people and making a new recipe and enjoying that food. But it is just food. I think we're all so obsessed with it that I think that's when it starts to become a problem. And I would go as far as saying, I think probably 80-90% of people that I've worked with, and this is hundreds of people over the years, have some level of disordered eating. And that's a shame, because then trying to then explain the vegan principle or the benefits of being plant-based is feeding into that narrative of restriction. And it's a very difficult line, because for me, I don't want to encourage a disordered eating, but I'm very strong in my beliefs of not harming animals and that plant-based is such a nice, healthy way to live. It's difficult, but I always say with people, try it, think how you feel. Let's look at the fact that you're getting all of the nutrients from your food and then work from there rather than giving them too strict rules.
It's interesting to see that, as you were mentioning, it doesn't have to do with which kind of diet you're using, but how you're relating with that. Like if you're a meat eater and that's the only thing you eat, it's probably also unhealthy. And if you're vegan or vegetarian and the only thing you eat is mashed potatoes and pasta and bread, you're definitely going to be lacking nutrition in your body.
Yeah.
It's important to be informed. And I think also the culture, as you were mentioning, and we're going to get a bit into the mental health area now, the culture and the way the world teaches to relate with our bodies and with food in general. It has to do so much with emotions in a way, and that's how we get into the restriction or the overeating or the body negative way of like a negative way to relating with our own bodies. How do you think these different ways of relating to food and our bodies could impact our mental health in general, and how do you approach this in your work? Because I know that it is something that you do bear in mind, as other nutritionists may not.
I think I try not to give too many strict rules. So I try and I guess it's a lot like what you do in your work, is that I'm not going to give you the answers, but I'm going to prompt you to find them yourself. So instead of saying this is a set of rules that I want you to live by, and me being like, because that's also a big thing actually that I do want to touch on, is that when you're a coach or a therapist or a psychologist or whatever, you are instantly put on a pedestal and you're instantly put on in a position where what you say could affect someone's life forever. It's a lot of pressure, but it's also something to bear in mind for clients, is that we're also not perfect people. Do you know what I mean? I'm far from perfect. I still have many, many triggers with food. I still have many, many triggers with my mental health. The difference is the awareness of it. So that's what I kind of say to people, if they feel like they're, with their food in particular, going back to your question more, the relationship with the three is, if you're making a big change in the way that you're eating or moving your body, you also have to go and see a therapist, or you have to go and get some counseling, or go with someone that's more qualified than me to help you with your mental health of this as well, because it's just not going to work otherwise long term. But also it could bring up something that I'm just not equipped to tell you about. So if I suddenly say, okay, how do you feel? I feel tired. I feel like I'm overeating. I feel this, I feel that. And then I say to you, how do you think you can help yourself? And that's normally what I would say. They'd say, oh, well, maybe cut the 4 coffees in the morning because I'm having the crash at 3 p.m. It's just kind of giving people the tools to understand how they feel and how they would feel better, and not telling people. Like, I don't want to become that person that's kind of giving people an ultimatum to do it or not do it. I think we all know how we feel. And I ultimately think that living, I know this has become a real buzzword the last few years, but living intuitively is so beneficial to say, I don't feel good because of this. I will feel better because of this. And yeah, just going back to the therapy thing, like, I am the worst person. I tell everybody in the world to get therapy, but I'm just a huge advocate for your brain is a muscle. I'm a personal trainer. I'm not a psychologist. And you should really be working them both simultaneously and getting the support and the help and the encouragement to do both. It's not to say that you're going to need a therapist, a personal trainer, and a nutritionist forever. But what I am saying is those 3 can come in handy. You know, I can cover 2.5 maybe, but not, you know, you can get outside resources to help you with your journey.
I was thinking this thing that you were saying, it's very interesting that at least you move your clients towards that view of themselves. I do agree to say everybody knows, you know, like how you feel better, what movement makes you feel better, or what food could make you feel better, or what relationship could make you feel better. But to be honest, at the same time, I think society and culture brings up like such a big dissociation, actually, that when we get to adulthood, because I think children are very intuitive in that sense, but when we get to adulthood, like, most people are so dissociated from themselves. We eat just to eat because it's time to eat, not because we're actually hungry, not because, and you know, this difference between, I don't know, like emotional hunger and actually being hungry. We need, as coaches, psychologists, nutritionists, personal trainers, to promote this in people. It is part of our jobs, I believe, to help people be more mindful about themselves in general, mentally speaking, physically speaking, spiritually speaking. So I was thinking maybe we've been bringing these to the conversation, but how do you feel your mentality as a whole changed from all of these, you know, like this thing we were talking about, feeling as a whole, you know, more united with the rest of the world and with beings in general? And if this had led to, maybe you could say, a lifestyle, you know, like a way of living. I don't know, how do you relate with that idea of having a lifestyle?
I think in this industry especially, there's so many things that people claim, and there's so many things that, you know, you can go on Instagram and there's 18 different ways to start your day for your mental health, or there's a million different ways to lose a kilo or whatever. And like you say, that makes us like disassociate with ourselves a lot, because you think, well, if Jennifer Lopez can wake up and have a kale smoothie, then I should do that, you know? Or it's just all of these things I don't really like to have a kale smoothie at say 6 a.m. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe I want some strawberries or a piece of toast at 9. And a nice thing to say with this is like, who told you that? And that's what I often ask clients, because there's often this thing where people will come to me and they'll say, oh, but I fast, which, like, of course, fasting, okay, amazing. If it works for you, it works for you, fabulous. But then they'll come to me and they'll say, well, it's good for this, and this, or this is good for this, and this. I'm like, who told you that? Well, my friend did it. Where did they hear it? I don't know. Well, okay, let's discuss that, and let's discuss the black and white facts of the situation. So I would say, like, in terms of a lifestyle, find what works for you personally and work with someone that's going to also encourage you to look within yourself. I think what all of this comes down to as well, and something that I thought about when you were just talking about this, was for me personally and for a lot of my clients, the problem was I didn't want to look after myself because I didn't understand that I had self-worth, and I wasn't respecting myself enough actually to nourish myself or to move my body. So although we both say, you know what makes you feel good, even take away the disassociation, take away all of the other distractions, even if you're being intuitive enough to say, I could really do with some fruit today, or I felt great after that noodles I had last night, whatever, a lot of the time you're going to see the crisps, the chocolate, this stuff that makes you maybe not feel as good, and you're going to say, fuck it, I'm going to eat it because, well, I just want to feel full. I just want to feel a bit like comforted and in control. And that comes from self-worth. And actually, that was the biggest thing that I did for myself back then. And it sounds so alien to me, past me, because I just didn't feel like that ever in my whole life. I struggled with disorders in many different ways, mental health problems, and for me to finally say at like 24 or so at the time, I deserve to feel good. I deserve to move my body. I deserve to feel healthy. I deserve to feel worthy of movement and nourishment and life, and have not being out of breath walking up the stairs. I'm worth way more than that. Take care of yourself, and I just started to look at my body so differently. And like I said before, just disclaimer is that I'm not perfect. I still have triggers, I still have times, I still have reminders, and that's very important to highlight here. But now when I look at my body, or I look at my dimples, or, I wear a size large pants, I don't think, oh my God, I'm a large. I think, oh man, my legs are so curvy. That's so cool. They've carried me for 33 years. How amazing. Or I look at my lungs. I had a chest infection last week, and I was just looking at my lungs in the bath, like rising and falling. And I was like, wow, they've done that every minute of my entire life, and hopefully for such a lot longer. Let's help them out, like, this is my body, this is my home. I'm never gonna get another one, and I just don't want to abuse it anymore. I just don't want to hate on you anymore. I'm never going to change you, and neither should I want to. I can help you and I can nourish you, and we all come in shapes and sizes. And that was so important for me to realize, that I was trying to be the size 8 tiny person that a lot of my friends and a lot of things I was seeing on TV was, when in actual fact, I am just me. Like, I have curves and I have some body fat that probably never go away. And if it does, amazing. If it doesn't, amazing. It doesn't take away from my self-worth. And yeah, so I would say that long way to answer your question. But I think a lifestyle in general for me was understanding the link between it all and just liking myself a little bit more.
That's a lovely approach. A more respectful approach to our bodies and self-care, and realizing that whatever size or weight we can be, if you are taking care of yourself in different ways, in how you eat, in how you exercise, it doesn't mean that you have to follow. Because I was thinking, we live with social media and internet in such a moment of history where we follow people. We just, because someone, as you were saying, like Jennifer Lopez or Beyonce, are
having a smoothie at 6 a.m., then you think like, oh, I should be waking up at that time, or I should be waiting that, or I should be exercising 5 times a week or 6 times a week. And then we have this dissociation, we lose contact with ourselves. And with this that I was bringing in the beginning of being mindful, and as you were mentioning, intuition, I always think these are like different ways and words of saying the same thing, in a way, which is being in contact with yourself.
Yeah.
I always push my clients to have this explorer mind or scientific mind, like to approach yourself at different moments in your life with experiments, because in a way, for one part of your life, being vegan could work, and for another, it may not. I don't know why, because you're on your period, because of menopause, because of being, I have a friend actually that was vegetarian for many years, and when she got pregnant, then she felt like she needed to eat meat. I don't know. Who is anyone to judge? So being in contact with yourself and realizing, oh, now I'm into journaling, and journaling is good for me at this period, and meditation is very nice for me at this moment, and now I'm meditating every day. And then there's this other period in my life where I can meditate every other day, or like, of course there's a part of us and everyone knowing that incorporating different health habits could be hard from time to time, and there is a part that it's not about being self-indulgent, like, oh, I don't feel like meditating, I don't feel like taking care of myself with food, then just abandon everything. But having an explorer mind and being mindful about each moment, each day different, you could say, oh, today I feel like doing this. I'm going to do a longer meditation today because I feel like I can get into that. And then you can have your minimum non-negotiables, like, okay, I'm going to at least meditate every day, but those days that I feel like, oh, I don't want to do it or whatever, I can do just at least 5 minutes. So I can at least, like sit 5 minutes with myself and just close my eyes and connect with my breathing, and then just let it go. It doesn't matter if you're going to be those 5 minutes like thinking, oh, I don't want to be doing this, but at least you're there with yourself doing it. And if you're usually vegan and one day you say like, okay, I don't know, today I'm outside, I'm with friends, and I feel like I want to have that sandwich and it has some cheese. Like, I don't know, like everyone can have their own rules, but as long as we are not too strict on ourselves. So going into this, like you were mentioning in your podcast about having had situations of burnout, and this self-care in general, that we're talking about, how we take care of ourselves. And you do talk about a little bit about yoga and meditation. I remember when I was in Barcelona, you were already giving some like mindfulness moments in the end of some classes. How important do you think it is actually to make time for ourselves in this matter, and to see what we need in different moments in our lives and take care of ourselves, not to burn out?
I think everything that you just said, we're definitely on the same page with everything. I think the judgment thing that you mentioned on ourselves and on others, I think as soon as you say, well, when people ask me, or if the conversation comes up that I'm vegan, sometimes I'm met with, oh, well, I'm sorry I eat meat, or I'm sorry I'm veggie, or whatever. And it's often, we all think that we're getting so judged all of the time, and we put it on ourselves. And I do it, I think if I meet someone and they say, oh, I run and I'm doing, I run every morning, I'm like, oh, I don't really like running, sorry. And it's like, why do we do that? And I think when you start to realize that everybody feels so judged, you start to think, oh, I'm just not going to judge people anymore. I'm not going to judge myself, because it doesn't feel nice in those situations to feel like you're judging someone, or you're judging yourself, or whatever. Like you said, you can always change. And I think the thing with that is that if you do change, then the judgment on yourself becomes so much more, you know? There's obviously, like you say, there's non-negotiables that you do, and I think that's such a nice way for you to say it so clearly and concise. Like, it's so nice that you say it like that to your clients as well, because it's something that I often struggle to be able to put into words like that. So it's nice. What I always say is my non-negotiables, honestly, are, for me, are being vegan. For me, it's not that I would judge myself if this would happen, but for me, it's kind of like a thing that goes beyond me. It feels bigger than me. And I think 7 years ago when I moved to Barcelona and I was lonely and I'd just come out of a really rubbish relationship, and I needed something to believe in, actually. And I needed something that was going to be there. I've never been so overly religious. And I think for me, it was something that I could just understand, and it made sense. And I could look at these animals and think, oh my God, this cow is exactly the same as my dog. So that for me is like a non-negotiable. But there's also people that don't have that, and I have to understand that. And I think, yeah, it does have a link to like the burnout thing as well, is because you get on this path and you're just so focused in the moment, and then on reflection you're like, oh, but I've not actually worked out for 2 weeks myself because I've been so focused on what everybody else is doing or whatever, that you kind of lose yourself along the way. So for me, over the years, and still of course on that journey, I think I will be till the day I die, but for me it's about like understanding these things and understanding that I need to take care of myself, that I need to take care of others is actually something that I'm so passionate about, that is my purpose. I feel so like I've got this purpose here that can help people, and it makes me feel good. The flip side of that is you're talking to people all of the time. You know this. You're listening to people all of the time. You could have 8 different people in one day with 8 very different personalities and very different issues or happiness or sadness or emotions or whatever. I felt like I did 5 years of kind of back to back helping and doing. And it kind of last year, it got to the point where I was a bit like, this isn't sustainable for me. And it's not to say that I didn't love what I did, because I do. My clients become my best friends. They're amazing people and I love working with everyone. And you know what those classes are like also. Like, you get a bit deeper with people, you understand people, and that brings my heart so much happiness. But it just got to the point where my life was suffering. So to be there and to show up, I think I just had the realization that I needed to work smarter and not harder. And I need to step back. So I took 3 months off last year, the first time in my entire life that I've taken time off, I think since I was about 13. So I've always worked, I've always been very much of that mentality. And when I took that time off, like you said earlier, that was really a thing what you said, when this was the time for journaling. This was the time for meditation. We found a house that we really liked in Portugal a year ago. So we've been doing some stuff there with rewilding, and we have land and doing all of this stuff that was, for me at that time, so important. And I did stuff, don't get me wrong, I'm not very good at doing nothing, but it was stuff like reading, decorating a bedroom, journaling, doing my workouts, just understanding myself again and reconnecting with myself. Because what had happened was I was just in this loop of doing and I wasn't being enough. And for me, they're very, very different things. So now I'm kind of in that limbo still, actually, of being between Barcelona and Portugal. And the two things for me are like my yin and my yang. So when I'm in Barcelona, I very much get my yang cup filled, and that's great for me. I'm more social, I'm working more, I'm doing workshops, I'm here, I'm present, but I'm doing a lot more than I'm being. So for me, then when I go to Portugal, it's more like a retreat from that, and I'm more being. And I think if you can do that in your normal day-to-day life, obviously you don't have to buy somewhere in a different country to do that. I'm just extreme. But you can also find a balance with your life and your work. And understanding that your purpose can also be the worst thing in the world, because you're never going to sleep. You're never going to switch off. You know, when you're self-employed, you just don't have a day off. I'm sorry. As soon as you say you've got a day off, you're instantly thinking, man, I've got that podcast with Holly tomorrow. I've got this going on at the weekend. Then I'm going to edit. Then I'm going to do a day off is never a day off. I mean, long story short, I think with burnout and things like that, that is also the culture, the same as the fitness industry, the same as food and all of these things. Everybody is so focused on how hard each other are working. Just stop with the thinking of everyone else and what they're doing and think of yourself, because money will only get us so far. That was always the thing that I used to say was, I want to make money. I'm not thinking of money when I'm getting up at 6 a.m. exhausted. I'm thinking I need to sleep. And I'm thinking I don't feel well. And I'm thinking I've not meditated for 2 months because I'm so focused on meditating with everyone else and making sure they're okay. And yeah, just switching it around and being more, what am I doing, not what everybody else is doing. That's their life. And just having less like we all have like the fear of missing out. I think a lot of time when you're in a bad mindset, a difficult period in your life, you look elsewhere for inspiration, but you also look elsewhere for ways to make yourself feel even worse, because we're our own worst nightmares. When in actual fact, you can just turn it around and be like, why am I so focused on them? It's to deflect. It's to not think about yourself. It's to think you're better than they are. Or, oh, did you see what she did? Or did you see what he did? Or, oh, I don't like that house that they got. Or, I don't like this car. I don't like her haircut, whatever. It's all deflection. So as soon as that stops, and then you think, it's about me again. Oh no. But that can actually be really eye-opening, you know, and you can start to think, what do I need? Instead of thinking of what everyone else needs.
And to finish up maybe and round up this conversation, I would love to know, what's your self-care routine, if you have like a daily routine or something?
I think for me, it depends where I am, but it also depends what I've got on that day. So I mean, I'll talk you through like the average, I guess, here. So I get up in the morning, and really don't go off me, because I'm one of those really strange people that really loves early morning. But what I do is very much like so nourishing to me that I actually look forward to getting up in the morning, is I have my big fluffy dressing gown next to my bed. So my big gown, fluffiest thing ever. I put my big socks on over my pajamas. I put my big fluffy dressing gown on. I go to the living room. I keep it very zen. So I try not to look at my phone for at least an hour when I wake up, just because, well, we know all of this. Everybody knows this by now. But I just know myself also. I just get sucked down the rabbit hole of like, even if it's something as innocent as cat videos, like, you know, nobody needs that at 6 a.m. And I go in and I look at my actual real life cat, and we have a little snuggle. And he's just the happiest little soul in the world to see me in the morning. So that's always nice to like be greeted like that. And then I'll make myself a cup of tea. And then for me, what's really important actually in the morning is moving my body. And like I touched on right at the start of this, it's whatever I feel like that day, unless I've got something planned, in which sometimes I book some classes or whatever to guide me. Usually it will be me going to the gym with my hat on, my earphones on, and just having 30 minutes. Sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's an hour. So I'll move my body. It could be a walk in the park. It could be the gym. It could be a dance with my favorite songs. It could be a stretch. It could be anything that I'm feeling like that morning. Sometimes it's boxing, and then you know, like it's going to be a powerful day. And then, yeah, I'll have some breakfast. So it'll be like a smoothie if I'm feeling, quote unquote healthy, I guess. But it will be a smoothie, maybe a piece of toast with avocado if I'm hungry. And then I'll just kind of get on with my day then. So I'm quite lucky in the fact that at the moment, there's only a few days a week that I'm starting work at 8. And yeah, I just go along with my day like that. I think for me, what's the most important, this is ever changing. When I'm in Portugal, it's more like I'll go for a walk in nature and I want the sunlight on my face, and it's just a different environment than a city. But what's most important for me in the morning is that it has to feel good. I am not the person that's going to punish myself, because one, I don't deserve punishment. I like myself enough to not punish myself. Two, I'm not going to keep it up if it's a punishment. I'm going to do it maybe 2 or 3 days. I'm going to feel like I'm in the army and feel great. But in the end, I'll feel like this is a punishment. It's not nice. And number three, I want something that's going to make me feel like for the rest of the day, even if I'm looking after everyone else, I took that time to look after myself. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want to tell people to do things that I'm not doing myself. And yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I just need to disclaimer this. Tonight we're going out with friends. I'll probably have a few glasses of wine. Tomorrow morning will look like lying in bed with a coffee until at least 10 o'clock. Also fine. No punishment, no guilt. That is me, you know? So subject to change.
It seems to me that flexibility could be one of the main words towards that, you know, like being connected with yourself and generally having your non-negotiables, like having some movement every day. But once in a while, I can go out, I can have a couple of drinks, or but just sleep late, you know, go to bed late or anything, and then I could have a day without movement.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I want to know your morning routine.
Oh, okay. Well, I do wake up and eat usually granola with soy milk or oat milk. So that's my usual breakfast. I don't have many variables. And then my non-negotiable is meditation. So I do meditate every day. And I don't really have a specific morning routine in that sense. I do read 5 times a week. But like 5 times a week, I read for half an hour, but sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes it's in the evening, sometimes I catch up with reading during the weekend. And then I usually work out in the mornings. But like during winter time, for example, I do work out more around midday because I want to be like, I don't like going out in the morning because it's cold. I do journaling sometimes, not very routinely, just when I feel to do it. I do try to eat as much homemade meals as I can. So that's like a very important part of my daily routines, usually to cook for at midday and in the evenings. So yeah, I think that's mainly my habits in general.
I think we're just both like on the same flex, this doing things that feels good.
Yeah.
Being flexible and allowing room to change, but also having things that make you feel good in that moment.
So yeah, that's why I can't, you know, say specifically like, this is my daily routine, you know, like I wake up at this time. I do wake up generally at 8 a.m. I used to wake up earlier before, but then with like the sunrise is very late here in winter. So then I'm getting up a little bit later. And
that's good, that's intuitive.
I do not drink alcohol. Like I haven't been drinking alcohol for years now. I've never been a person that like I've never drank much. But lately, like last couple of years, I think I had a forced drink in New Year's Eve because I was like, okay, it's New Year's Eve. I should have one drink. Come on, let's get crazy or something.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't drink alcohol, and it has to do with this being more mindful and conscious and connected with my daily self routine.
Yeah.
To finish up, maybe would you share with us, with the listeners, if someone's hearing from Barcelona to being, you know, to work out with you? And I also know you do have some online classes. So where could people find you?
Yes, so Instagram is the place usually that I would say, at Holly Barber. And my website's on there and everything else. And when I'm in Barcelona, I do some workshops. We've got a really cool one coming up actually, which is boxing and breath work. So I'm working with someone who's a transformational breath coach, and we're doing like a little day retreat in Barcelona. Yeah, I do a Monday night boxing club, which is online every Monday at 6:30 European time. So it's just a way that we can all just come together, jump about and have some fun to a good playlist on a Monday evening. We finish nice and sweaty, and it's just a really, really nice little space to be. And yeah, I mean, I share quite a lot on Instagram on how to just love yourself a little more, and hopefully I'm a nice, positive, quote unquote, influence I really try to be, but I also try to keep it very real. So I'm not just all fairies and avocado on toast. It's also just reality and like yourself, you know, a lot of mental health stuff. And I also do retreats as well. I've just sold out for my first open retreat, which is in June. And I do, like bespoke retreats from Portugal as well. So for groups of friends or workplaces and things like that. So a lot of random things going on at the moment, kind of splitting my time between the two, but always available for a chat if anyone wants to reach out.
Random and connected though.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Holly, so I think that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. That was great.